Observation. We all know it to be the bedrock and foundation of deduction. While I have talked about it in the past, I want to talk about it once again to sort of recap and reiterate old information in a more concise way and to bring new insight of things that I have learned since I spoke about it last. In the past, we have talked about two things that are vital to building the foundation of observation: mindfulness and a simple exercise system for your brain. Everyone knows that your brain adapts. If you do something enough times, eventually your brain will form neurological pathways to make the process of performing that task easier, thus conserving resources and promoting efficiency. It would be inefficient to do this for everything a person will do in their life because there is no guarantee that person will do it again. Thus, remembering everything and making a neurological pathway for everything is inefficient because there is no guarantee it will be useful. This is why practice and repetition are necessary for mastery of any skill. This was a concept one of my old martial arts instructors hammered home. One thing that he would say, something that he learned from his master, was practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. And for the most part, this is true. If you practice wrong, you will learn wrong. If you practice by throwing 1,000 punches, but your bone alignment is off and your form and technique are just terrible, well then whenever you're going to throw a punch at something, you're just going to end up hurting yourself. In an ironic turn of events, putting all that effort into learning something the wrong way will just make it that much harder for you to reteach yourself the right way. This isn't so much a problem when training observation, more when training your logical faculties. However, the basic principle is that a person without observation training is likely going to be habitually unobservant, hence the need for training. The particular training system that I presented related to general observations. First, focus on observing the geography, structure, and composition of your environment, and the relation of objects in your environment to your own position. Then, once you have built that up as a habit, add on to that by observing not only the position of objects in your environment, but their details as well. Things such as the color, texture, material, etc. Finally, once that has become habitual, begin to observe the functions of objects and how those objects relate to one another. The bookshelf is designed to have books on it. The chair is for sitting comfortably and is placed in front of the desk. Thus, the relation is that whomever sits in the chair utilizes the desk as well. Thus, the process of observation leads nicely into the process of deduction. If you want to see the full playlist from my Observation 101 series, click that info card right up there. Moving on though, the other thing that we talked about quite a bit later was the concept of mindfulness. Mindfulness is a mindset that revolves around the concept of self-awareness, knowing where you are, when you are, and who you are in relation to the world around you at any given moment. In an introspective sense, knowing who you are allows for clarity of thought and singularity of purpose. Being bogged down by cares, worries, and self-doubt clouds the mind and robs you of your finite attention, making it more difficult to focus. But that is more something for you to figure out on your own. I'm an educational channel, not a self-help channel here to give you life hacks, tips, and tricks. If you want advice on introspection, I would recommend asking the people who actually know you to hold up a sort of mirror to you to show you yourself from their perspective. That is something that I'm simply not equipped to do in a general video made for no one in particular. I feel like I need to clarify, I have nothing against self-help channels just as long as they stay within the bounds of giving helpful general tips, but not promoting that advice as a hard and fast absolute rule. Because you can give good, general advice that applies to a lot of people, but when you get too specific, that's when you start leading certain people astray who that advice isn't going to work for them because everybody's different. However, in a practical sense, this entails observing yourself, not just your surroundings. Being mindful of where you are helps your mind to naturally gather information about your environment, which is why my first step in my observation training program, as it were, is to observe the placement of objects in space and your position in space relative to them. Now, at this point, you might have noticed that the idea is to use your mind's natural functions to your advantage, rather than go against how the mind naturally works. By setting specific, albeit broad, objectives for your mind, you are priming your brain to allocate resources to that objective, rather than focusing on some obscure concept of observing everything in general. Following this trend, a great way to prime your brain to both map out your surroundings and take into account your position is to constantly plan out your movements before you make them. Visualize yourself maneuvering through your environment in the most efficient manner possible. As you can imagine, this task involves taking obstructions and obstacles into account. Thus, you have observed the objects in your environment because you have mapped out your movements. Once you go to actually maneuver through your environment, the plan that you've already devised will be playing sort of in the background, and you will more gracefully move through your environment without much thought at all. This is because you have already put the thought into it before you even did it. This allows your mind to focus on other things while you move. This sounds like a long process, but it really doesn't take more than a few seconds as you get used to it, and with a little bit of practice, you can constantly formulate plans as you walk from room to room. Of course, the more you do it, the faster you become. Another aspect of mindfulness is the ability to focus and be absorbed in the current moment with unwavering attention. That is certainly something many of us have lost touch with, what with all the distractions modern life has to throw at us. However, there is a simple meditative exercise that you can do to foster mindfulness, and will make the process of training your observational skills much easier. In fact, this technique is so well known that I wouldn't be surprised if you've already heard of it in your study of deduction and observation. It is simply called Mindfulness Meditation and only requires about 10 to 15 minutes of your day. You don't have to sit in a traditional meditative stance, although some studies have shown that it has its benefits. But you can just as easily do it sitting in a chair or even lying down. Just be careful not to fall asleep if you do it lying down. And make sure you won't be distracted by anything if you're sitting at a desk or something. Close your eyes and focus on your breathing. Feel every aspect of breathing, how the swift, cool air curves at the edges of your nostrils as you breathe in, how it expands your lungs and fills your body. Take careful notice of the way your lungs deflate as your diaphragm contracts and the warm breath is pushed out of your nostrils. If you prefer, you can even do box breathing, where you breathe in, hold your breath for a 4 count, and then after exhaling, wait another 4 count before inhaling again. To keep track of the time, you can set a timer on your phone, preferably not an obnoxious alarm sound. We want to smoothly exit out of the meditative state. And using your phone, the primary antagonist of our ability to focus as a means to help you train your focus, has a nice ring of poetic justice to it. It should be noted that this is an exercise that should remain a part of your daily routine. If you just stop doing it, you will start to lose the benefits that you were reaping while you were doing it. So don't just stop after you become proficient at observation. You won't be doing yourself a favor. So to recap, in order to train your observational skills, you need to begin with a simple training exercise, starting with observing things that fall into a broad, non-specific category. And to aid your observational training, daily mindfulness meditation will help your self-awareness and ability to focus, both vital to observation and deduction. Last video, I said that observation has always been my weak point in deduction and something I had to work on really hard to develop. So now I pass it on to you. What would you say is your weak point in deduction? Would you say that you are bad at observing like I was, or perhaps you don't have a good grasp on the application and flow of logic? Or is it that your knowledge base is insufficient? Click on that info card up there to take the survey and let me know. That way I can see more of what the majority of you are struggling in and adjust the flow of my content accordingly. Don't worry, it's all anonymous. With that, thank you all so much for watching. If you're new here and you liked what you saw, be sure to subscribe. Also, if you want to see me make a video on some more observation training exercises, leave a like. If you would like to support the channel financially, you can donate via Patreon. And of course, I will always do my best to answer any and all questions in the comments down below. With that, all you aspiring detectives out there, arrivederci.